My son-in-law poured a bucket of garbage over my head at Christmas dinner and said, "Here's your soup, old woman." The room erupts in laughter. My daughter, Emily, covers her mouth, hiding a smile. I stands dripping, silent. Removes lettuce from my hair with dignity. I takes out my phone and sends message. My name is Barbara Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. It's permission to be destroyed. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Now, back to my story. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early December when everything started to unravel. Though I didn't know it yet, I was sitting in my late husband's study, the one room in our Greenwich, Connecticut home that still smelled faintly of his cologne 8 years after his death. The leather chair creaked under my weight as I reviewed investment portfolios by lamplight. My reading glasses perched on my nose, my fingers drumming absently on the mahogany armrest. Outside the bay windows, snow had begun to fall, dusting the brown December grass in white, covering the rose garden Thomas and I had planted 30 years ago. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you remember you're alone. That's when Emily appeared in the doorway. My daughter, my only child, 33 years old and beautiful in that effortless way that reminded me of myself before grief and time had carved lines into my face. The afternoon light caught her dark hair the way it used to when she was 8 years old, spinning in the backyard with dandelions clutched in her fists, before life got complicated, before her father died, before she married Ryan Phillips. "Mom," she said, her smile bright against the December gloom. "Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. You have to join us. Everyone's coming. Ryan's college friends, some people from my office. It'll be wonderful." I pressed my hand against my abdomen, feeling that familiar burning sensation that had become my constant companion. Dr. Richardson had been clear about the ulcer when he diagnosed it last month. "Stress makes it worse," he'd warned. "Rich foods are out. Stick to bland meals. Take it easy." As if taking it easy was something I knew how to do after 35 years managing investment portfolios for some of the wealthiest families in Connecticut. "I appreciate it, sweetheart," I said carefully. "But my stomach's been giving me trouble. Dr. Richardson says I should stick to bland foods for a while. You all enjoy yourselves. I'll be fine up here." Her face fell in a way that seemed genuine, and something in my chest softened despite my better judgment. For a moment, she looked genuinely disappointed, and I found myself searching her expression for something I couldn't quite name. Authenticity, maybe. The little girl who used to bring me wildflowers and construction paper cards. "No," she said firmly, stepping into the study. "Absolutely not. I'll make you something special. A proper soup, nothing heavy. You can't spend Christmas Eve alone in your room. Please, Mom." I studied her face, looking for cracks in the facade. "You'd do that? Make something separate just for me?" "Of course I would. You're my mother." She smiled, but something in it didn't quite reach her eyes. Something I noticed but chose to ignore, because loneliness makes you blind to red flags you'd spot immediately in a business transaction. The observation lodged itself in my mind like a splinter, small but irritating, impossible to forget. After she left, I sat in that leather chair for a long time, watching snow accumulate on the windowsill. My mind drifted back to last summer, to Larry Bennett's law office with its smell of old books and furniture polish. I'd signed the preliminary documents while Larry reviewed the details in his careful lawyer's voice. The same voice that had guided me through Thomas's estate 8 years ago. The same voice that had helped me protect everything we'd built. "The house on Meadow Road," Larry had said. 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen. Perfect starter home. 1.05 million. Emily had cried when I told her. Actually cried, tears streaming down her face while she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Ryan had shaken my hand firmly, looked me in the eye with what seemed like genuine gratitude. "You're the best mother-in-law a guy could ask for, Barbara," he'd said. "Really. We'll never forget this." The closing was set for December 26th, right after Christmas. A perfect gift. The kind of gift that changes lives, that gives young couples a foundation, that says, I believe in you, and I want to help you build something beautiful. I opened my desk drawer and removed the folder. Donald Carter's business card was clipped to the front. Carter and Associates Realty, serving Greenwich since 1987. I didn't read the documents, just touched the folder. Ran my thumb along the edge of the contract that would transfer over $1 million of my money to my daughter and her husband. Then I closed the drawer slowly, deliberately, with a feeling I couldn't quite name settling in my stomach alongside the ulcer pain. The next afternoon, I came downstairs for water. My throat was dry, and I'd been working through some old investment reports, keeping my mind occupied the way I always did when something felt off. That's when I found Ryan in my kitchen, barking instructions at a young woman in catering blacks. Rental chairs were stacked near the dining room. Cases of wine lined the counter like soldiers preparing for invasion. Need any help with the preparations? I asked, trying to sound casual. I could. Ryan barely glanced up from his phone. We've got it covered, Barbara. Professional caterer handles everything. Wouldn't want you overdoing it at your age. At my age. I was 62, not 90, and I'd been managing complex financial portfolios when he was still in diapers. But I swallowed the irritation. I'm 62, not 90, I said evenly. I can still manage to, really, it's fine. He cut me off with a dismissive wave. Go rest. That's what you're good at these days, right? He laughed, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of laugh that has edges, that cuts. The catering assistant busied herself with wine glasses, her shoulders tense, clearly uncomfortable with the dynamic she was witnessing. I noticed how Ryan positioned himself between me and the counter space, forcing me to navigate around him in my own kitchen. He didn't move aside. He occupied my space as though it belonged to him. His movements proprietary and assured, like he was already the owner, and I was just a guest he was tolerating. I retreated upstairs without comment, but my hands were shaking. That evening, I was sitting at my desk reviewing quarterly statements when I heard voices in the hallway below, Emily and Ryan speaking in urgent whispers. The old floorboards in my study creaked slightly as I moved closer to my door, and I held my breath, straining to hear. Just need to hold it together through closing. Ryan's voice was low and tense. After that, I know, Emily interrupted. But she's still my mother, Ryan. Your mother who's been sitting on a $2 million house while we've been cramming into that guest room for 2 years. His voice dripped with resentment. Come on, Em. We've earned this. Emily's voice wavered. After the 26th, everything changes, Ryan said firmly. The staircase creaked under footsteps heading down. I stood in the gathering darkness of my study, my chest tight, my breathing shallow, the words repeated in my mind, arranging themselves into patterns I didn't want to see. After the 26th, everything changes. Not we'll finally have our own place, or we're so grateful. Everything changes. Like I was an obstacle. Like I was the problem standing between them and something they deserved. My hand found my phone almost automatically. Muscle memory from decades of making difficult decisions. I scrolled to Larry's number but didn't press call. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Because once you see certain truths, you can't unsee them. And I wasn't ready to face what those words might mean. Christmas Eve arrived with the weight of inevitability. 7 o'clock. I could hear voices and laughter drifting up from downstairs. The sound of my home transformed into something unfamiliar, something that didn't belong to me anymore. I paused at the top of the staircase, my hand on the polished oak banister that had been there since 1993, installed the year Emily started kindergarten. Below, my living room had become a festival of strangers. I descended slowly, each step deliberate, each step taking me closer to something I could feel approaching but couldn't yet name. Several guests glanced up. A few nodded politely. Most ignored me entirely, too absorbed in their conversations and cocktails to notice the woman who actually owned the house they were partying in. Ryan stood near the fireplace, animated, gesturing with a tumbler of whiskey. His face was flushed, his movements exaggerated. Drunk or getting there. Emily moved between kitchen and dining room in her emerald dress, playing hostess with practiced ease. When she spotted me, her smile froze for just a moment before she approached. "Mom, you came down. How are you feeling?" My stomach cramped on cue. I hadn't eaten since lunch, just crackers and weak tea. The rich smells from the kitchen made me queasy, and the sharp alcohol vapors in the air didn't help. I touched her elbow gently. "About that soup you mentioned, sweetheart. My stomach's really bothering me. Could I have some now?" Her face flushed. She glanced toward Ryan, then back to me, and in that glance I saw everything I needed to know. "Oh, right, the soup. It's still cooking on the stove. Needs to simmer a bit longer." I studied her expression, seeing the truth in the way her hands fluttered to her neck, then her hair, then clasped together nervously. "Is it? I don't smell anything cooking." "It's a slow simmer, very gentle." Her voice pitched higher, defensive. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Can you wait that long?" There was no soup. I could see it in every nervous gesture, in the way she took a half step backward, putting distance between us, in the way she couldn't hold my gaze. My own daughter had lied to my face about something as simple as soup, as basic as keeping a promise to her sick mother. 20 minutes, I repeated quietly. "Sure, sweetheart. I can wait." I moved to sit in my leather armchair, the one that had been mine for 15 years, but someone's coat was draped across it. I stood awkwardly near the bookshelf instead, pressing my palm against my abdomen, closing my eyes briefly against the discomfort that was becoming sharper, more insistent. That's when Ryan's voice cut across the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. The old woman always has to interfere with her whims, doesn't she? Special dietary needs, special timing. Several guests turned. The room didn't go silent, but conversations dimmed. A man in a Yale sweatshirt smirked into his wine glass. "What?" Ryan continued, emboldened by alcohol and audience attention. "It's true. Every family gathering, it's about Barbara's stomach, Barbara's schedule, Barbara's comfort." I stepped forward, my voice measured and calm, using the tone I'd perfected in 35 years of high-stakes negotiations. "Ryan, this is my house. I'm asking politely for you to show me some respect." His smile turned ugly. "Your house? That's rich. We've been living here 2 years, Barbara, taking care of you. This feels like our house at this point." The temperature in the room dropped. I could feel it. Emily's face went pale. "Ryan, stop it. You're drunk." He whirled on her. "I'm not drunk. I'm finally being honest. Someone has to say it." "Say what exactly?" I asked quietly. "That you're a burden." The words came fast now, fueled by whiskey and resentment that had clearly been building for months. An old woman clinging to past glory, living in a house way too big for her, expecting everyone to dance around her needs. "You should be grateful anyone bothers with you. Most women your age die alone, forgotten in some nursing home." The room went completely silent. Someone near the back shifted uncomfortably. I felt eyes on me from every direction, felt the heat of humiliation crawling up my neck, but I kept my voice steady. "I see," I said very quietly. "Is that what you think?" "It's what everyone thinks. They're just too polite to say it." What happened next occurred fast, but felt slow, like watching a car accident unfold frame by frame. Ryan set down his glass with exaggerated care. He walked toward the kitchen with theatrical purpose, yanked open the cabinet under the sink, and retrieved a metal bucket. Kitchen scraps from the party prep filled it. Vegetable peels, discarded food, greasy water with a slick sheen on top. The smell hit me even from across the room. Several guests gasped. "Ryan, what are you—" Emily started. "You want your special soup, old woman?" Ryan crossed the room in 4 strides, his eyes glassy and bright with malice. Here's your soup." He lifted the bucket high and dumped the entire contents over my head. Garbage slid down my face. Potato peels stuck to my shoulder. Liquid dripped from my nose, my chin soaked through my blouse in cold, greasy rivulets. The smell was revolting. Onion skins, coffee grounds, eggshells, rancid water. For 3 seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. Then someone giggled. The giggle became a laugh. Soon half the room was laughing, some covering their mouths, others openly howling. The man in the Yale sweatshirt actually clapped twice. A woman near the dining table had her shoulders shaking, unable to control herself. Bon appétit, Ryan grinned triumphantly. Emily stepped forward, her hand outstretched. Ryan, you shouldn't have done that. But she was smiling too, trying not to, pressing her lips together but smiling. My daughter was smiling while I stood covered in garbage in my own home. I reached up and removed a piece of lettuce from my cheek. I pulled a cloth napkin from the side table, one of the good ones, monogrammed, and methodically wiped my face. No hurry, no theatrics, just careful, almost ceremonial cleaning. Then I removed my phone from my pocket. My fingers were steady as I typed, "Donald, cancel the Meadow Road purchase immediately. The deal is off. The $1 million gift is canceled. We'll call tomorrow to confirm." I pressed send. The message confirmed with a soft chime. Ryan's grin faltered slightly. "What are you doing, Barbara? What are you—" I looked at him, just looked at him for a long, quiet moment. His face was still flushed, still triumphant, but something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps, or the first cold touch of consequence. Then I turned and walked to the stairs. My footsteps on the hardwood were the only sound in the now silent room. Behind me, someone cleared their throat nervously. I heard Emily whisper something urgent, but I didn't turn back. I climbed the stairs slowly, feeling garbage drip from my clothes with each step. At the top, I walked to my bedroom, entered, and closed the door with a soft click. The lock turned with a quiet final sound. And in that moment, standing alone in my bedroom, still dripping with their contempt, I made a decision. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. They wanted to treat me like garbage? Fine. They were about to learn exactly what happens when you humiliate a woman who spent 35 years teaching millionaires how to protect their assets. Christmas morning arrived with silence. I woke in the same clothes from the night before, dried garbage still flaking from my collar like some grotesque parody of snow. My bedroom door remained locked. The house felt different, quieter, heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. What Ryan and Emily didn't understand was that humiliation doesn't break everyone. Some of us, women like me who've spent decades in rooms full of men trying to outsmart us, we don't break. We calcify. We become something harder, colder, infinitely more dangerous. Around 9 in the morning, soft knocking began. "Mom, please, I brought you breakfast. Coffee, toast, just how you like it." Emily's voice came muffled through the wood, tentative, testing. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the door, said nothing, let the silence stretch and twist like a knife. A tray settled on the floor outside. Footsteps retreated down the hallway, quick and nervous. 20 minutes passed before I opened the door a crack, retrieved the tray, and locked myself back inside. The coffee had gone cold. Starbucks dark roast, 2 Splenda, exactly as I took it. Whole wheat toast from the Pepperidge farm loaf in the pantry. She'd remembered. Or maybe she'd always known, and just never cared enough to use that knowledge kindly. I ate nothing, just held the mug, looking out my window at snow falling on Round Hill Road, Christmas morning in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I was a prisoner in my own home. Or maybe they were the prisoners. They just didn't know it yet. I opened my leather moleskin notebook, the same one I'd used for client notes, during 35 years managing portfolios for families whose names appeared in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. My hand was steady as I began writing, not emotional journaling. This was financial documentation. Column 1, dates. Column 2, amounts. Column 3, purposes. This was what I knew. This was my language. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't smile while you're being humiliated. Numbers are clean, pure, absolute. June 2019, $30,000. Wedding contribution. October 2022, $50,000 investment in Ryan's AI startup. Failed by March 2023. November 2022 through present. $800 monthly for utilities, insurance, groceries. 24 months equals $19,200. Rent value of their guest suite, conservatively $2,500 monthly. 24 months equals $60,000 in foregone income. I paused, let my pen hover over the paper. Total, $159,200 over 5 years, not counting the canceled $1 million house. My handwriting remained steady, muscle memory from decades of signing documents, reviewing statements, marking corrections. I added a final note: return on investment, humiliation, contempt, betrayal. The numbers stared back at me like witnesses at a trial. But here's what I realized as I sat there in my locked room, still smelling faintly of garbage. I didn't just want justice. I wanted them to understand, truly understand, what they'd thrown away. I wanted them to feel the full weight of their choices, and that meant I needed to dig deeper, because if there's one thing I learned in 3.5 decades of financial analysis, it's this. People's money trails tell you who they really are. Every transaction is a confession. Every bank statement is a testimony to character. So I started digging. Over the next 5 days, Emily knocked twice daily. Christmas night, December 26th morning, evening of the 27th. Each time, her voice came through the wood with apologies, please, promises. Mom, please, can we talk? Ryan's sorry, he was just drunk. You're worrying me. At least tell me you're okay. I sat 6 feet from the door each time, listening. Never responded. Not once. Because silence, I was learning, is its own weapon. Let her worry. Let her feel uncertainty gnawing at her insides, the way my ulcer gnawed at mine. Let her lie awake at night wondering what I was thinking, what I was planning, whether her entire future had just evaporated in one moment of champagne-fueled cruelty. On the 27th, Ryan's voice joined hers, blustery and defensive. Come on, Barbara, don't be dramatic. It was a stupid joke. You're really going to hold a grudge forever? My jaw tightened, but I remained quiet as stone. After 10 minutes, they left. I heard Ryan mutter something angry. Emily shushed him. They were fracturing. I could hear it in their voices, feel it through the walls. Good. Let them turn on each other. Let them taste what betrayal feels like. That afternoon, when I heard them leave, car doors slamming, engine starting, tires crunching on gravel, I emerged from my room like a ghost in my own home. The house felt different without them in it. Quieter, yes, but also mine again. I went to my study and dialed from memory. 3 rings. Barbara, is that you? Larry Bennett's voice carried warmth and concern. We'd known each other since 1997, since before Thomas died, since I was still young enough to believe that good people always won. Larry, I need to schedule a meeting. Professional matter. Early January, if possible. A pause. Larry knew me well enough to hear what I didn't say. Everything all right? I glanced at my closed bedroom door, at the staircase where I'd walked with garbage dripping from my hair, at the photographs on the wall, Emily at 8 years old, gap-toothed and smiling, before money and marriage and Ryan Phillips had taught her to see her mother as an obstacle instead of a person. No, I said quietly. Everything is not all right, but it will be. We scheduled for January 5th. I hung up, feeling something cold and focused settling into my chest. Not rage. Rage is hot and impulsive and stupid. This was something else. This was purpose. December 30th brought the moment everything crystallized. My phone rang. Donald Carter, the realtor. Miss Chen, just wanted to confirm the Meadow Road property purchase is officially withdrawn. The sellers accepted the cancellation, though they're retaining your $10,000 earnest deposit as stipulated in the contract. I'd expected this. Understood. Thank you, Donald. I was about to hang up when he continued, almost chatty, oblivious to the grenade he was about to toss into my lap. You know, it's funny. Ryan called me last week before you canceled, asked some interesting questions. My attention sharpened like a blade. What kind of questions? Donald laughed. Oh, about resale value, what comparable homes on Meadow Road sell for, average time on market. whether a quick sale might mean accepting below asking price. I figured he was just curious about the investment, didn't think much of it until he trailed off, realizing his mistake. The line went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, feel my pulse hammering in my throat. They weren't planning to live in the house. They were planning to flip it, to sell my $1 million gift immediately, probably at a loss, to get cash in hand. My generosity was never about building their future. It was about funding their present, paying off whatever debts or schemes or desperate situations Ryan had gotten them into. "Thank you, Donald Len," I said, my voice like ice cracking on a frozen lake. "That's very illuminating." I ended the call and sat perfectly still in my desk chair. The winter sun slanted through the window, catching dust motes in the air, and I watched them drift and spin while something inside me shifted. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't just Ryan getting drunk and making a terrible mistake. This was calculated. This was planned. And Emily knew. She had to know. That's when I started seeing the pattern. My mind went back through the past year like I was reviewing financial statements, looking for discrepancies, finding them everywhere, once I knew what to look for. Last January, Emily asking about my retirement accounts, mentioning estate planning, suggesting I update my will. "Just to make sure everything's in order, Mom. You never know what might happen." March, questioning why I kept such a large house. Wouldn't something smaller be more practical, easier to manage at your age? July, after I spilled hot coffee and burned my hand badly enough to raise blisters. She didn't ask if I was hurt. She asked if I'd considered assisted living. "Just to be safe, Mom. Just so someone's always around to help." August, Ryan joining these conversations, talking about maximizing assets, liquidity, not letting property values sit idle. "You're sitting on a gold mine, Barbara. Houses like this in this market. You could downsize, pocket the difference, live comfortably anywhere you want." September, the house gift discussion began. I thought I was being generous, helping them build a future. Now I saw differently. They weren't grateful for the gift. They were impatient. It was taking so long to arrange, so many legal documents, so much coordination. Every delay felt like a personal slight to them, like I was deliberately making it difficult when really I was just being careful with over $1 million. Each memory sharpened something inside me. My daughter hadn't transformed overnight. This was gradual. Death by 1,000 small betrayals. The question that kept me awake that night wasn't how could she do this. It was when did she stop being my daughter and start being someone I didn't recognize? I became invisible in my own home over the next 2 weeks. I learned their patterns the way a predator learns the habits of prey. Ryan leaving around 10 most mornings, supposedly to the gym, though I noticed he never came back with the flush of exercise. Just the smell of coffee shop Wi-Fi and desperation. Emily working from home, taking calls in the kitchen from 2 to 4. I moved when they didn't, ghost quiet, retrieving mail, checking the recycling bins outside, observing. I went through trash, not kitchen garbage, too obvious, too degrading, but recycling bins, paper shredder bags, Emily's bathroom wastebasket. Found a Chase statement dated January 12th. Minimum payment $485. Past due notation in red. A crumpled AT&T bill. Service suspended. $327 owing. I photographed everything with my phone, created dated folders, emailed copies to my secure account. Every piece of evidence time-stamped, documented, building a case the way I used to build investment portfolios, methodically, comprehensively, leaving nothing to chance. On January 18th, I heard Ryan on the phone in the guest room, voice low but audible through the heating vent that connected our rooms. I pressed my ear to it, holding my breath. I know. The closing got delayed. It's temporary. Pause. No, she's fine. Just old and stubborn. Look, once we sort this out, I'll have access to liquidity. I promise. Longer pause. What do you mean last chance? Give me until end of February, please. The voice on the other end was angry, aggressive. I couldn't make out words, but I could hear the tone, threatening, final. Tony, I'm good for it. Have I ever not paid you back? Another pause. Shorter this time. Fine. End of February, you'll get your 15 grand. The line went dead. I returned to my desk, hands shaking now, not with fear, but with vindication. Made a note. January 18th, 2:40 p.m. Phone call. Name, Tony. Amount owed, $15,000. Threat implied. Deadline, end of February. Ryan claims liquidity coming soon. He still thought the house gift was happening. Still thought he could charm or manipulate or wait me out. Still didn't understand that the woman he'd humiliated wasn't the soft, lonely widow he'd mistaken me for. I was Barbara Chen, and I'd spent 35 years teaching rich men how to protect their money from people exactly like him. January 25th, a FedEx envelope arrived at Larry's office marked for my attention. I drove to collect it, signed for receipt, my hand steady on the pen. Back in my car, parked in the lot with winter sun streaming through the windshield, I opened it. 33 pages, the financial investigation I'd requested. Page 1, Ryan David Phillips, date of birth, August 14th, 1987. Current address, my house. Credit score, 542, poor, very poor. The kind of score that closes doors, that makes banks laugh, that marks you as fundamentally untrustworthy with money. I read methodically, professionally, the way I used to review client portfolios. 7 credit cards, all at 95 to 100% utilization. Chase Sapphire Reserve, $22,000 balance, $22,000 limit. American Express Blue, $15,000. Capital One, Venture, $18,000. Discover, $12,000. Citi, $8,000. Bank of America, $6,000. Wells Fargo, $4,000. Total, $85,000 in credit card debt alone. 2 personal loans. Lending Club, $15,000 at 24% APR. Marcus by Goldman Sachs, $12,000 at 21%. Monthly debt service approximately $3,200. Current income, 0. But page 17 made me go completely still. Recent credit inquiries. Home equity line of credit. First Republic Bank. Application date, November 18th, 2024. 2 months ago. Property address, 47 Round Hill Road, Greenwich, Connecticut. My address, my home. Ryan had tried to borrow against my house while living under my roof, while I was planning to gift them $1 million property. While pretending to be grateful, pretending to care, he was attempting to fraudulently use my home as collateral for a loan. Application had been denied, obviously, once the bank verified title records, but the attempt had been made. The intention was crystal clear. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes, winter sun warming my face, and I didn't feel angry. I felt vindicated. Every suspicion confirmed, every doubt erased, every moment of hesitation about what I was planning to do gone. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. This was about teaching people that actions have consequences, that you can't pour garbage on someone's head and expect them to smile and keep writing checks. Early February arrived with winter still gripping Greenwich in its frozen fist. On February 5th, Donald officially notified the prospective buyers that the Meadow Road deal was permanently canceled. 2 days later, the consequences arrived at my doorstep. Ryan retrieved the mail around 11, and I heard him outside, then his footsteps returning faster, almost running. 3 minutes later, my study door slammed open without knocking. Ryan stood in the doorway, Emily behind him, both looking like they'd seen their own graves. He waved a certified letter like a weapon. "What is this? What did you do?" I removed my reading glasses slowly, set them on the desk with deliberate care. "I assume you received notice about the canceled house purchase. I informed Donald in December, as you know." Ryan stepped forward aggressively, and I watched him with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. "This letter says we owe $15,000 to people we've never met for a house we never got." I kept my voice level, professional. "You owe that money because the cancellation created financial damages for innocent third parties who'd made arrangements based on the sale. That's how contracts work, Ryan. Actions have consequences. Emily's eyes filled with tears, and I wondered if they were real or practiced. Mom, how could you? We apologized. We tried to make things right, and you just destroyed our future over one mistake. I stood slowly, deliberately, feeling my full height. One mistake. That's what we're calling Christmas Eve. Interesting. But here's what Ryan and Emily didn't understand about manipulation. I'd been watching people try to manipulate money out of wealthy clients for 3.5 decades. I could smell a performance from a mile away. So when they launched into their rehearsed apologies, when Ryan's face contorted into remorse and Emily's voice trembled with regret, I just watched, studied them, saw every tell, every false note, every calculated pause. The gift is canceled permanently, I said when they finished their performance. I suggest you figure out how to handle that lawyer's letter on your own. 5 seconds of silence. Then Ryan exploded, and there it was, the real person beneath the mask. You self-righteous old woman. We gave up 2 years living in this prison, taking care of you, dealing with your complaints, your problems. We earned that house. My voice cut through his rage like a scalpel. You lived rent-free in a $2.3 million home. I paid your bills. You earned nothing. He lunged forward, not attacking but aggressive, trying to intimidate. And in that moment, I saw him clearly. A small man drowning in debt, desperate and dangerous, who'd seen me as a life raft and was now watching himself sink. Is that a threat? I asked calmly. I should document that. What Ryan did next was so predictable, it almost disappointed me. On March 5th, at 2:17 in the afternoon, someone called Connecticut Department of Social Services, Adult Protective Services Division. The voice was male, mid-30s, slightly nervous. Larry's investigator traced it later, a burner phone purchased at CVS on Summer Street in Stamford on March 4th. Security footage showed Ryan making the purchase. The caller claimed I was mentally incompetent, confused, possibly suffering from dementia, a concerned neighbor who wished to remain anonymous. Larry called me that evening with the news. They'll probably send someone within 3 business days, well, he said. Standard protocol. When they arrive, be cooperative. Take whatever assessment they offer. You'll be fine, Barbara. We both know you're sharper than most people half your age. 3 days later, March 8th, my doorbell rang at 10:30 in the morning. I'd been expecting it. Patricia Delgado from Adult Protective Services, professional and thorough, apologizing for the intrusion. We sat in the living room where I'd been humiliated, and I answered every question on her cognitive screening test perfectly. What's today's date? What season are we in? Name 3 objects and repeat them later. Serial subtraction of 7 from 100. 23 minutes later, she set down her clipboard. Ms. Chen, you scored 29 out of 30. That's excellent for any age. You're well above any threshold for concern. She leaned forward, and her voice dropped. Between us, the complaint appears to have been malicious. Someone wanted to create problems for you. I'm closing this case and noting that, in my report, if this was retaliation for you taking legal action to protect yourself, that's abuse of the reporting system. After she left, I sent Larry a text. APS visit complete. Scored 2930. Case closed. Proceed with next phase. Because that's what Ryan didn't understand. Every move he made, I was 3 steps ahead. Every trap he set, he was really setting for himself, and the noose was tightening. 4 days later, March 12th, 4 in the afternoon, I stood at the bottom of the staircase and called up. Ryan, Emily, please come to the living room. We need to discuss your housing situation. Silence for 30 seconds, then footsteps, slow and heavy. They appeared at the top of the stairs and descended like prisoners approaching sentencing. Ryan's face was guarded. Emily looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back hastily. I didn't offer them seats, just held out a document in a folder. I'll keep this brief. 5 days ago, someone called Adult Protective Services claiming I was mentally incompetent. The complaint was anonymous, but my attorney traced it. I looked directly at Ryan. The burner phone was purchased at CVS on Summer Street in Stamford on March 4th. Security footage shows the purchaser. Credit card records confirm identity. You, Ryan. He started to protest, but I raised a hand. Please don't insult both our intelligence. A social worker visited me. I took a cognitive assessment, scored in the 97th percentile. The case was closed and flagged as malicious. I placed the document on the coffee table between us like a judge delivering a verdict. This is a notice to quit, prepared by my attorney pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, Section 47A-23. You are tenants at will in my property. I am terminating that tenancy. You have 30 days from today to vacate these premises. Your deadline is April 15th, 2025 by 5 p.m. The explosion was immediate. Ryan's rage, Emily's tears, threats of lawsuits and countersuits and wrongful eviction. But I'd been preparing for this moment for months. Every threat they made, I had documentation to counter. Every claim they raised, I had evidence to refute. If you're not out by April 15th, I said calmly, I'll file for eviction in housing court. The sheriff will remove you. I'd prefer to avoid that embarrassment, but the choice is yours. I walked toward the stairs, and over my shoulder, I delivered the final blow. Oh, and Ryan, that $15,000 you owe Tony, that's your problem now. Good luck. But I wasn't done, not even close. Because the thing about dismantling someone's life is that you have to be thorough. You can't leave loose threads. So while Ryan and Emily panicked about the eviction, while they made desperate calls to attorneys who all refused their case once they learned Larry Bennett represented me, I was executing the final phases of my plan. On April 2nd, I retrieved mail from the box at the end of my driveway. Clear morning, crocuses pushing through the last patches of snow. Fred Morrison, my 70-year-old neighbor, was walking his golden retriever. We chatted about weather, property taxes, the usual suburban pleasantries. Then Fred lowered his voice. Hey, saw your son-in-law last week, Thursday evening at the Ginger Man on Greenwich Avenue. You know that place? I nodded, heart beginning to pound. Fred shifted uncomfortably. He was with a woman, not Emily, redhead, younger. They were sitting pretty close, real close, holding hands across the table. He cleared his throat. Probably nothing, maybe a business associate, but I thought you should know. I kept my expression neutral. Thank you, Fred. I appreciate you mentioning it. But inside, a final piece clicked into place. I went directly to my study and called Larry. I need a private investigator. Surveillance. Ryan Phillips. I need photographs. Because here's the thing about revenge. Real revenge isn't hot and impulsive. It's cold and comprehensive. It's about removing every support beam, every escape route, every possible lifeline, until there's nothing left but consequences. 3 days later, the photographs arrived. Ryan and a redhead at the Ginger Man, April 1st, 7:45 p.m. Multiple shots, entering together, sitting in a corner booth, holding hands, Ryan kissing her cheek, leaning across the table with his hand on her face, clearly intimate, unmistakably romantic. I selected the most damning photo, printed it on high-quality photo paper at Staples, placed it in a standard frame. That morning, while Ryan and Emily slept, I made my usual coffee and toast, read the paper. Then I placed the framed photograph on the kitchen table, slightly off-center where it would be immediately visible, propped against the fruit bowl, and I returned to my study to wait. At 7:45, Emily's footsteps descended. Her morning routine, coffee first, always coffee. The kitchen door swung open, 10 seconds of silence, then a gasp that could probably be heard from space. Ryan, get down here right now. The screaming started, the accusations, the denials, the truth finally brutally exposed. Objects breaking, furniture scraping, Emily sobbing, Ryan's weak justifications crumbling. I listened from upstairs without expression, without satisfaction, without anything except the cold certainty that justice, real justice, tastes nothing like you think it will. The marriage died in my kitchen that morning, and I felt nothing at all. April 15th arrived like a deadline in more ways than one. the eviction date, the day Ryan and Emily had to be out of my house or face the sheriff. But here's the question I couldn't stop asking myself as I watched the sunrise that morning. Was I destroying my daughter to punish her husband? Or was I saving her from a life built on lies? Because what I was about to decide in the next few hours would determine whether Emily and I had any chance of rebuilding what had been broken, or whether I'd lose her forever in my quest for justice. By 11 in the morning, Ryan's car was packed. Duffel bags, cardboard boxes, the debris of a failed marriage stuffed into a 10-year-old Honda with a dented bumper and expired registration. I watched from my study window as he made trip after trip. His movements jerky and aggressive, throwing things rather than placing them. Emily stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching him with an expression I couldn't quite read from this distance. Grief? Relief? Both? Around noon, Ryan appeared at the top of the stairs one final time, duffel bag in hand, face haggard and unshaven, eyes red from lack of sleep or tears or rage, probably all three. He saw me in the living room and stopped. We looked at each other across the space that had once been filled with Christmas laughter and is now filled with nothing but the weight of consequences. His mouth opened, then closed. What was there to say? What words could possibly bridge the gap between pouring garbage on someone's head and asking for forgiveness? I didn't break the silence. Just watched him with the same detached interest I'd perfected over months of observation. After 30 seconds that felt like 30 years, he descended the stairs, walked to the front door, stopped with his hand on the knob and looked back one final time. I met his gaze, my expression unchanged, offering nothing. No absolution, no anger, just the simple, devastating reality that he'd made his choices and now had to live with them. He left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like the end of a chapter. I stood there for a moment, feeling nothing and everything simultaneously, then returned to my study, one down. But the harder question remained, what about Emily? 20 minutes after Ryan's departure, Emily emerged from the guest room. She looked shattered in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Face blotchy, eyes swollen, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. She descended the stairs slowly, each step requiring visible effort, like she was walking through water. "Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry about everything. I'm filing for divorce. I know I don't deserve to ask, but..." She paused, and tears started flowing again. "Could I stay here? Just a little longer, until I find a place? I have nowhere else to go." And here it was, the moment I'd been simultaneously dreading and preparing for since Christmas Eve. The choice that would define not just her future, but mine, because I could say no. I had every right to say no. She'd stood by while her husband humiliated me. She'd smiled while I dripped with garbage. She'd been complicit in the scheme to flip my gift house for cash. Every logical, rational, justified bone in my body wanted to point at the door and tell her to follow her husband into whatever consequences awaited them both. But she was still my daughter. And somewhere beneath the greed and the manipulation and the terrible choices, there was still the little girl who'd brought me dandelions from the garden. I studied her face carefully, searching for something I desperately needed to see. Is this remorse or desperation, Emily? Are you sorry for what you did or sorry you got caught? She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Both," she said finally, and the honesty of it surprised me. "I'm sorry I got caught because it forced me to see what I'd become. And I'm sorry for what I did because I don't recognize the person who did those things. I don't know when I stopped being your daughter and started being someone who could stand by and watch you be humiliated, but I want to find my way back. I want to understand how I got so lost." I let the silence stretch between us, watching her face for signs of performance, for the calculated pauses and practiced expressions I'd learned to recognize, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine shame. Not enough to erase what had happened, but maybe enough to build something new on. "Come to my study," I said finally. "We need to discuss terms." 24 hours after Ryan's departure, Emily sat in the chair across from my desk. She'd showered, changed clothes, looked marginally more composed but still fragile in a way that made her seem younger than 33. You said we needed to discuss terms. I'm ready. I leaned back in my leather chair, the same chair where I'd made decisions about millions of dollars over 3.5 decades, and prepared to make the most important decision of my life. If you stay here, you're no longer my dependent. You're a tenant. That means rent, $500 per month, due the first of each month. No exceptions, no extensions. She nodded quickly. I can do that. I'll get a job immediately. I raised my hand. You will pay your own utilities, phone, car insurance, health insurance, if you can afford it. I will not receive bills with your name on them. You are responsible for yourself now. Okay. Yes, I understand. You will attend family therapy, weekly sessions with a licensed therapist. I've already compiled a list of qualified professionals in the area. You'll choose one, schedule regular appointments, and provide me with confirmation, not receipts. I don't need to know what you discuss, but I need to know you're going and doing the work. She blinked, and I could see the question forming. Therapy? Yes, because I need to know you understand what went wrong, how you allowed yourself to be manipulated, how you can prevent it in the future, how you can rebuild yourself into someone who makes better choices. Her voice was small, almost childlike. I'll do it. I leaned forward and my voice became harder, colder, because this was the most important part. These terms are not negotiable, Emily. If you miss rent, you leave. If you skip therapy, you leave. If you bring Ryan into my home or provide him with any support, financial or otherwise, you leave immediately. Are we absolutely clear? She nodded, tears forming. Crystal clear. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving me another chance. I didn't smile, didn't soften, just held her gaze with the full weight of what this meant. Don't thank me yet. Prove you deserve it. The first 2 weeks of May were a trial period in every sense. Emily stayed in the guest room, kept to herself, started job searching online with an intensity that suggested genuine motivation rather than performance. I watched carefully for signs this was manipulation, that she was playing a long game to get back into my good graces and my will. But what I saw instead was someone genuinely trying to figure out how they'd gotten so lost. On May 1st, she brought me a personal check, number 101, first check in a new account she'd opened, $500 signed and dated. I examined it with the same professional scrutiny I'd once applied to multi-million-dollar wire transfers, nodded, took out the receipt book I'd bought at Staples specifically for this purpose. Thank you. Rent received for May. I filled out a receipt, tore it off, handed it to her. The formality reinforced everything. This wasn't mother and daughter. This was landlord and tenant. And maybe if she did the work, we could build back to something resembling family. On May 8th, a certified mail envelope arrived. I signed for it, carried it to my study. Phillips versus Warren, Stamford Superior Court, Civil Division. Ryan was suing me. I read his claims with something between amusement and exhaustion. Breach of oral contract, promissory estoppel, unjust enrichment. He valued his companionship and household assistance at $50,000 annually, wanted restitution for his startup investment. I called Larry, read selected passages aloud. His laughter came through the phone like music. He poured garbage on your head, and he's claiming his companionship was worth $50,000 annually. This is frivolous, Barbara. Any first-year law student could get it dismissed. So we'll attend the hearing. Absolutely. June 15th. Mark your calendar. This will be entertaining. 4 days later, Emily officially filed for divorce at Stamford Superior Court. Irretrievable breakdown. Adultery. She brought the filing papers to my study, showed them to me like a student showing a report card. It's done. I'm moving forward. I nodded but said nothing. Words were still cheap. Actions mattered. May continued in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Emily paid rent early each month, leaving checks under my study door before I woke. She attended therapy every Wednesday at 4 p.m. with Dr. Linda Chen, a specialist in family systems and financial abuse. I verified the first 3 appointments, then stopped checking. Either I trusted her or I didn't, and constant surveillance wasn't sustainable for either of us. On May 18th, Emily cooked dinner for the first time since childhood. Nothing elaborate. Baked chicken, roasted vegetables, simple salad. But she set the table carefully, used the good dishes, lit candles. We ate in silence for several minutes, and I could feel her working up the courage to say something. Finally, she set down her fork. "Mom, I need to say something. A real apology." "Not like before." I continued cutting my chicken, didn't look up, waited. "For years, Ryan told me you were selfish, that you had more money than you needed and should help us more, that successful parents owed their children a head start. And I—" Her voice cracked. "I started believing it. I started seeing you as an obstacle, a resource to be managed instead of a person to be loved. I don't know when it happened. When I stopped asking how you were feeling and started asking about your financial plans. When I stopped visiting because I wanted to and started visiting because Ryan said we should maintain the relationship." She was crying now, but she didn't look away. "Christmas Eve, when Ryan did that horrible thing, I should have stopped him. I should have walked out with you. Instead, I smiled. Some terrible part of me thought you deserved it for canceling the gift. What kind of person thinks that?" I set down my knife and fork, looked at her directly. "What kind of person thinks that?" "Someone who forgot that love isn't transactional. Someone who let greed replace gratitude. Someone who became exactly the kind of person I used to judge." She wiped her eyes. "I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I'm not sure I can forgive myself, but I'm trying to understand how I became that person. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing the therapy, paying the rent, whatever you ask, because I need to figure out how to be your daughter again." I was quiet for a long time, letting her words settle in the space between us. "That's the first honest thing you've said to me in over a year. Maybe longer." She looked up, hopeful. I shook my head slightly. "But words are easy, Emily. Change is hard. Keep going to therapy. Keep paying your rent. Show me through actions, not apologies. Show me you can be the person you're describing, not just talk about becoming her." She nodded. "I will. I promise." On June 25th, I asked Emily to meet me in my study. Evening, quiet house, desk lamp casting warm light over documents I'd been reviewing. She sat in the client chair, and I could see nervousness in the way her hands twisted together. I slid a bound document across the desk. Last Will and Testament of Barbara Chen. She didn't touch it, just stared at it like it might explode. "Mom, I don't want to talk about—" "You're still my primary beneficiary," I interrupted. "Everything I have goes to you eventually, but there are conditions." I opened to a tabbed section. Pointed. "The estate transfers to a trust managed by Larry. You receive monthly distributions equivalent to modest living expenses, enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. Full control transfers to you at age 45, but only if you meet certain requirements." Her voice was barely audible. "What requirements?" "Demonstrate 5 consecutive years of financial responsibility. Steady employment, no significant debt accumulation. Evidence of sound financial decisions. Complete at least 2 years of therapy with documented progress. And if you marry again, your spouse has no claim to trust assets without a prenuptial agreement I approve." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't trust me." My voice softened slightly, but only slightly. "I'm protecting you from opportunists, from making the same mistakes again." "These conditions aren't punishment, Emily. They're guardrails. Show me you can manage money responsibly, maintain emotional health, make wise decisions, and everything I've built is yours. But there won't be easy access for someone to manipulate you for it." I paused. "The house. You can't sell it for 10 years after my death. Live in it, rent it out, whatever you choose, but not sell. I won't have it flipped for cash. This house is our history, your father's legacy. It deserves more respect than that." She nodded slowly, understanding settling in her expression. "I accept. Thank you for not cutting me out completely. You're my daughter. I love you. But love doesn't mean enabling bad decisions. It means caring enough to teach hard lessons." She stood, walked around the desk, and hugged me. Tentative at first, then genuine. I stiffened initially, muscle memory from months of betrayal, then carefully placed one hand on her back. Brief, formal, but real. June 15th arrived with summer heat and a sense of completion. Larry picked me up at 9. Ready to watch a case implode? More than ready. We drove to Stamford Superior Court, and I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I enjoyed Ryan's suffering. I'd learned that revenge doesn't actually feel good, but because justice, real justice, brings a kind of peace that revenge never can. The courtroom was utilitarian. Wood paneling, state seal, fluorescent lighting. Ryan and his attorney, Thomas Hayward, were already seated. Ryan wore an ill-fitting suit, probably borrowed, and looked thin and haggard. When I entered, his eyes tracked me with a mixture of hatred and fear that told me everything I needed to know about how the past months had treated him. The hearing was brief and devastating. Hayward's arguments were rambling, desperate. Larry's response was surgical. Connecticut's statute of frauds requires contracts for real estate to be in writing. Oral promises are unenforceable. The $50,000 payment was explicitly documented as a gift, not an investment. And then, the coup de grace. Larry presented evidence of Ryan's attempted fraud, the home equity application using my property as collateral. Judge Patricia Woolmack didn't even recess. She looked directly at Ryan with an expression that could freeze fire. Mr. Phillips, your case is without merit on multiple grounds. All claims are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, you are ordered to pay Ms. Chen's reasonable attorney fees, $8,500 within 30 days. The gavel fell. Ryan sat motionless, face drained of color. Outside in the hallway, Emily was waiting. She'd come in case she was called as a witness. When Ryan stumbled out, saw her, started toward her with desperate eyes, she held up a hand. No, don't. My attorney will contact you about the divorce. Don't call me. Don't come to the house. Her voice was ice-cold steel wrapped in finality. She walked to my side. Ryan stood alone in the courthouse hallway, watching us leave together. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't about him anymore. It had stopped being about him months ago. This was about Emily and me, about whether we could rebuild something real from the ashes of what had been destroyed. September 5th arrived with early autumn and my 63rd birthday. Emily spent the afternoon in the kitchen, and around 2, she appeared in my study doorway. Mom, Dr. Richardson's dietary restrictions. Which vegetables are safest for your ulcer? I consulted my memory of his guidelines. Carrots, celery, potato are fine. Nothing acidic, low sodium, simple broth base. She nodded, returned to the kitchen, and I heard sounds of careful preparation for hours. At 5, Fred Morrison arrived with a bottle of modest wine and his usual cheerful greeting. At 6, Emily called us to the dining room. The table was set properly. Cloth napkins, good dishes, candles flickering. And in the center, a tureen of soup, steam rising gently, the smell mild and comforting. She ladled soup into my bowl first, her hands steady, met my eyes. The soup I promised you 9 months ago. I'm sorry it took so long. We ate. The soup was perfect, clear broth, soft vegetables, carefully seasoned, made with attention and care, and something that felt like love. After the main course, Emily stood, glass in hand, and I could see her gathering courage. Mom, I need to say something. Her voice trembled, but didn't break. I'm so sorry for everything, for letting greed blind me, for choosing material things over our relationship, for standing by while someone humiliated you in your own home. You were always there, supporting me, helping me, loving me, and I took it all for granted. I treated you like an obstacle instead of my mother. Tears now, but she kept going. Thank you for not abandoning me completely. Thank you for the painful lesson I desperately needed. I'm trying to be better. Every day, I'm trying to be the daughter you deserved all along. I set down my spoon, wiped my mouth carefully. Emily, what happened at Christmas wasn't just about Ryan. It was about you making choices. You chose to enable him. You chose to see me as a resource instead of a person. Those were your decisions." She nodded, tears streaming. "But you've also chosen to do the work, to pay your rent, to go to therapy, to rebuild yourself into someone who understands that love and money are completely separate things. Those are also your choices, and they matter just as much." I paused, feeling emotion rising in my chest. I did what I believed was just. Not revenge, justice. Ryan got what he deserved. You got a second chance, because I believe people can change if they're willing to do the hard work. But the chance is only opportunity. What you do with it, that's entirely your choice. Keep making good ones. Fred raised his glass. To second chances and good choices. Later that evening, after Fred left and Emily finished cleaning the kitchen, she paused by my study door. "Mom?" I looked up from my book. She crossed the room without hesitation and hugged me. No tentative approach, no testing the waters, just a genuine embrace. I set down my book and put both arms around her, held her for a long moment. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart." Night fell over Greenwich. The house grew quiet. I took the container of soup Emily had saved for me, reheated it carefully, and walked to the porch. The wicker chair creaked as I sat, that familiar sound I'd heard 10,000 times. September evening, crickets singing their late summer song, the garden visible in fading light, roses still blooming, maple trees showing first hints of color change. I sipped the soup, feeling its warmth, its simplicity, its care. And I thought about the journey from Christmas Eve to this September evening. 9 months, the same amount of time it takes to create new life, appropriate somehow. 9 months ago, I stood in my living room covered in garbage, humiliated, betrayed by the people I loved most. Tonight, I sat in peace, my daughter's sincere apology still echoing, justice served, boundaries established, relationships being rebuilt on foundations of honesty instead of transaction. People say revenge is a dish, best served cold, but I learned something different through all of this. Justice, real justice, isn't about temperature or timing. It's about teaching lessons that need to be learned, establishing boundaries that should never have been crossed, and understanding your own worth well enough to demand that others recognize it too. Ryan never learned those lessons. He's living with his brother in Bridgeport now, filing for bankruptcy, facing the consequences of a lifetime of bad decisions. Emily is learning them slowly, painfully, but genuinely. And me? I simply remembered what I'd forgotten while being generous. That kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. It's permission to be used. Real love includes accountability. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or houses or unconditional support. Sometimes it's letting them face the full weight of their choices, then offering a hand up when they're ready to change, not before, not out of guilt or loneliness or fear of being alone. But when they've earned it through consistent action and genuine transformation. I finished my soup, watched stars emerge in the darkening sky, felt the autumn breeze carrying hints of the winter to come. My ulcer had been healing. Dr. Richardson confirmed it last week. Stress levels down, inflammation reduced. Turns out that establishing boundaries and demanding respect is actually good for your health. Who knew? The porch light cast a warm glow over the garden, and I thought about Thomas. What would he think of how I'd handled this? I like to believe he'd understand. He'd always said I was too soft, too generous, too willing to let people take advantage. Maybe this year had finally taught me the balance between kindness and self-respect. Peace. That's what I felt sitting there. Not triumph, not vindication, not satisfaction at Ryan's downfall. Just peace, the kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make a choice between family and self-respect? Between forgiveness and boundaries? Have you ever loved someone enough to let them face consequences instead of rescuing them? Because that's what this story is really about. Not revenge, but the courage to establish boundaries, even with the people you love most. Leave a comment below and tell me, was I too harsh on Emily? Or did she need exactly the lesson I gave her? Should I have forgiven Ryan? Or was justice the right response? And most importantly, what would you have done in my situation if this story resonated with you? If it helped you think about your own boundaries and relationships, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss stories like this one, real stories about real people facing impossible choices. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to demand respect, even from family, maybe especially from family. And here's my question for you as you go forward into your own life. What boundaries have you been too afraid to establish? What respect have you been too lonely to demand? What lesson does someone in your life need to learn? And are you brave enough to teach it? Think about it, because the soup you serve, whether it's literal or metaphorical, says everything about how you see yourself and how you allow others to treat you. Thanks for listening to my story. I'm Barbara Chen, and I learned the hard way that sometimes the best soup is the one served with a side of self-respect. Until next time, remember, know your worth, establish your boundaries, and never let anyone, not even family, convince you that demanding basic human dignity makes you the villain. Now go establish some boundaries of your own. You deserve better than garbage soup.